Hey boys and girls, this is lesson number 4 for our fantasy reading unit. So if you go ahead and fill in the blanks for goal number 4 of I can keep track of multiple characters and a complex plot on your goal sheet, that would be great. You might want to pause the video for a second so you have time to do it. And also, while you're doing that, remember to reflect on your knowledge about this goal before the lesson and your effort that you're going to be putting forth during this lesson. Okay, as we move forward, you can maybe take a look at this picture here. There are a lot of characters from the Harry Potter series in here, and what I'd like you to do again is to pause the video, and while it's paused, to be considering not all of them, because you may not know all of the characters depending on how many of the books you've read or the movies you've seen, but thinking about who these characters are and what they're known for. So pick out a few or one or two and have a conversation with your partner. Be sure that each of you get a chance to talk and that you can build upon your ideas, okay? All right, and now that you've done that, for a reason, you know about those characters, and even if you haven't read too many of them, or you've probably heard of a few of them, and you've done that because in your mind and as you've been listening to these, you've been kind of organizing your thoughts around different characters in different ways. And one way that we can do that while we're reading is to create a graphic organizer. So I'll give you a couple minutes right now for you to create one, and you're going to need 4 columns going across the top. I would create this as being about a half piece of paper. So about 4 columns going across and probably halfway down through your paper, and we're going to divide this into 3 different sections. I'm going to cover this up for a second because we're going to get to that in a moment. So 4 rows going up and down, or 4 columns going up and down, and then 3 rows going across. You may not necessarily need to make the lines going across. We've talked about that before, so just the columns first start would be good. So you might want to pause again here so that you can create your chart. The idea of creating this chart, and we're going to base this example on the Paper Bag Princess, of course, is that it sometimes helps us to keep track of things by creating lists and using an organizer in this way. So we're going to start with the main character, or one of the main characters, that being Elizabeth. And since we know this whole story, we can fill in her entire chart. And the problem that Elizabeth is facing is that Ronald, her fiance, the prince, has been captured and she needs to get him back. And while there are some other characters here, that the dragon and Ronald, that we need to keep track of, it's a little bit more simple of a book, but we can still put this organizer to use. So we can see that this is the problem, is that she's needs to get her prince back. And her solution, or the change that she's going to see, is that she outsmarts the dragon. And while she does that, she's still not happy. She's not happy with the response that Ronald gives her. And in the end, she says, "Ronald, you're a bum." And she's happier without him. So there is a bit of a change that we see through Elizabeth as the story goes on. When we look at the dragon, we see a different situation. The dragon's, it's not necessarily a problem, but what keeps him motivated is that he is hungry and he'll eat anything that is in his way. And so that's what his primary focus on is. He just wants to keep eating, eating, eating. And he changes throughout this story because he's tested by Elizabeth. And while he's trying to continue to prove that he is the best and that he can do anything that he wants, he ends up being tricked by her. And in the end, because of this testing and the tricking that she does, he ends up actually losing Ronald in the end. And then, of course, we have Ronald. And Ronald, his problem is that he is taken by the dragon in the beginning of the story. And his solution or change is that when he is saved by Elizabeth, he is not happy with the way that she looks. And because we see that change of him and not liking her anymore, in the end, that attitude actually makes him end up losing Elizabeth. And she does not like the response that he gives her when she's saved. So this is a basic version of a chart, and how an organizer might help you keep track of characters throughout. Now again, this worked for us easily because we've read the entire story and it was a bit shorter. Um, when we're thinking about The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's a little bit different here because we have more characters, and right now, I mean, the main characters that we see are Lucy, Mr. Tumnus, Edmund, and the White Witch. And there are more that are going to come into play here. I mean, we know that Peter is in here, we know Susan is in here, and there are more that will evolve as well. So because of that, we're going to want to definitely keep track of things to make sure that we understand who is who and what's going on with that character. So right now in the beginning, so far Lucy, her problem is that she's gone into Narnia and no one believes that she was there in this other world. She comes back and they're like, no, like you weren't gone. We kept playing hide and seek and that's it. And the change that she's gone into right now, as far as we've read, is that she gets back into Narnia, and this time she's with Edmund, and we see that she's a bit changed because she's happy that Edmund made it back with her. In the end, we don't really know what's going on with Lucy, and the other thing is, because we haven't read the whole story, the other thing is that she might come into more problems, and as she comes into more problems, we can add those to our organizer. So what I want you to do is to pause the video for a little bit now that you've seen a few examples and work on filling in some of the rest of this. Fill in what you might view as Mr. Tumnus's problem at this point. Fill in what you feel might be Edmund's problem and maybe what he's working on for his solution. And the White Witch, what her problem might be right now and what her solution or her change could be. And again, these are predictions or inferences, and some of them we do have some information, but do what you can independently. And after you've spent a minute or two filling that in, then have a discussion with your partner and try to build upon each other's ideas and add to your chart so that you can have a clear idea of what you think Mr. Tumnus's, Edmund's, and the White Witch's problems and maybe what their solutions or changes are that they're going through. So just pause for a moment now and do that. Okay, and coming back, you might have different things than me, and that's okay. But share a few with the rest of the class, and you might have come up with something similar to what I have here. And if you didn't, that's okay too, as long as we're along the same storyline. Mr. Tumnus, I say that his problem right now is that he kidnapped Lucy, and he's worried about the White Witch finding out. And so momentarily, right now anyway, his solution to that is that he lets her go, and it looks as though he's hoping that she's just not going to, the White Witch just won't find out, even though we've heard from Edmund that he kind of told her that Mr. Tumnus already had met Lucy. So right now that's where we are with Mr. Tumnus. With Edmund, he did not believe Lucy about Lucy getting into Narnia. But then he gets in and he meets the White Witch. And so this is a bit of a problem because he was saying all along, no, I don't believe you. And now he's there. And a little bit of a solution or a little bit of a change here is that he tells the White Witch about his siblings, about his brother and his two sisters. And he's agreed to bring them to the White Witch. Which, even though that's kind of a solution or a change to this problem, it's also could be creating another problem, which might lead into another solution or change, so that the story might be building as it goes along, and we've seen that as we're creating story mountains, that the problems keep increasing. So looking at the White Witch, her problem right now is that she wants Edmund to bring his brother and his sisters to Narnia. And the solution or change that I see going through is that she's done something about this and she's given him the magical Turkish delight, that treat, to get him to give her information about his brother and sister and to agree to take him back. So she's kind of on her way to the solution, but in the end we're not sure whether she's gotten what she wants or not. So we have time to fill this in. So again, as we continue to fill in this chart, will add to it, might take things away depending on what our inferences are. But graphic organizers are a great way to help us try to keep track of all of these different characters, and especially when the plot gets more confusing as more things go on. So why do this? Why do you think it's important to keep track of characters and their struggles and their motivations? And I'm going to end the video here and have you share a couple of ideas together as to why you think we spent time together doing this. Why do you think that we should keep track with an organizer about what the characters' struggles are, what their desires are, and what they're willing to do to try to make them happen? Okay? After you've had that conversation, then please go back to your goal sheet and fill in how you feel about your knowledge and understanding of keeping track of multiple characters and a complex plot. Okay? Good luck while you're reading independently today.